Welcome to Goat Pen Podcast number 1. This is Tim Trapp of Trapp Tree Service out of Germantown, Wisconsin. Welcome to the first in hopefully a long series of podcasts called the Goat Pen Podcast. And Goat Pen is a new community and training site that I'm starting. I'll be doing a Kickstarter for it, or rather I switched from Kickstarter and I'll be doing an Indiegogo campaign here shortly. And I started in podcasting with the Two Tree Guys podcast, Jared Abergina and Phil Rogacki. And we would go to trade shows and we would pick up people basically just doing drop-ins. And we would collect the stories of tree people. We talk about training. We talk about how they got into the industry. We talk about gear. We talk about all of it. And one of the things I noticed is that it was starting to look a lot like StoryCorps. It was starting to look a lot like I was recording kind of a living history. And I loved it. And I wanted to see that expand to other industries. And so I started Goat Pen, among other things, to curate these podcasts because people have questions about industries and they don't know where to get the answers. And I love podcasting as sort of a media art form. So my goal is to interview people in all industries. And tree care is near and dear to my heart. It's where I started with podcasting. I've got some experience in it, and so I'm starting here as well. But that's the goal of this is really to kind of capture the stories of people in different industries, and maybe to present to the public the stories that people aren't seeing or aren't hearing.
Sure.
So let's start with you, Tim. Maybe kind of pretend that it's career day at the high school, and you've got an opportunity to present, to these young, impressionable minds what it is that you do, why you love it, maybe why you hate it, and what you do for a living, and kind of introduce yourself that way.
So is the audience that I'm pitching this to other tree guys, or is it other people who are interested in tree work or interested in the topic of tree work? Maybe that's their own personal career.
Yeah, so let's start with people who don't know anything about tree care. Let me give you a real quick anecdote. I grew up in northern Minnesota, and that's logging country and forestry
Sure.
country. Maybe not so much tree care, because back in the the 80s when I was growing up, tree care, you didn't see it. It existed. People planted trees, people did pruning, but you never really, I mean, you could spend your whole young adult life never seeing a tree care operation. And I grew up around forestry, and I didn't know a thing about the forestry industry other than there was trucks and there was trains and there was trees and there was logging companies and there was companies that that made the wood products. And then I had girlfriend that was, her father was a tree surgeon, and I had friends whose dads and relatives owned tree care companies, and I literally had no freaking clue what the tree care industry was about. And now I live in California, and I've worked in the industry and in training and organizational development. I've seen operations, and I know now, but you can still drive around California and you can pass by, the signs that, the traffic control and the tree work ahead signs, and still never see a tree care operation. It's like,
Right.
it's almost hidden. It's like, it's there in plain sight, but it's still kind of hidden. And for those people who have heard of it, maybe seen a few videos on YouTube or Instagram,
Yeah.
this is kind of for them. So with that as your target, what have you got?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the unique thing that's interesting about my career choice is that um, I was able to find my way into it little by little, if that makes sense. What I started off as was uh, basically like young man has chainsaw and is looking to work hard. I worked at a landscape company in just a general greenscapes industry, and I was looking for a side job so that I could go make more money on the side because it is my opinion that at this stage in our economy, at least, if you want to get ahead, you're not going to do it working 45 hours a week, especially not if you're cutting grass. So I was looking to work nights and weekends and I wanted to pick something that my landscape company did not do. They didn't do tree work. I never touched a chainsaw at that company. So I found a company that was just looking for competent adults who could operate a chainsaw because everyone else was college students and they were not fitting that bill for them. And I would just go out, and it was my job to clear as much buckthorn. Are you familiar with buckthorn? Is that exist in Minnesota? Is that an invasive by you too?
No, it isn't. Give it an explanation. I'm assuming that it is like half tree, half brush. Am I
Think of kudzu in the south, where it
okay?
up here by us in southeast Wisconsin, and then totally 100 miles in every direction. It is prolific. It has the longest propagation season of any plant in our area, so it holds onto its berries and its leaves longer than anything else, and it's very good at filling in and choking out wood lines of other native species. Like all things that are currently invasives in our country, it is from Asia, because it has no predators here. Some of the responses that we're seeing are like people have like goats. Goats will eat the leaves on it, and if you keep it defoliated, it will die. But that was my first job. It doesn't grow very tall, maybe 30 feet tall max. So if you just have a chainsaw and the idea of how to make a notch, you can safely tackle all the buckthorn in your entire area. Then it turned into that, and with the emerald ash borer, it turned into also, well, hey, there's some dead trees in this woods that we're removing all the buckthorn from. Go ahead and knock those down too. Once those got a little bit close to a house or something you can't hit, or maybe another tree that is valuable, you'd have to learn how to put a notch in it and aim it the right way. And then once I got good at that, well, what do you do if it's leaning heavily at something you can't hit? Well, you put a rope in it, and then you put a pull against it, and then you put a notch in the right way, and then you knock it that way.
And you were learning this as you went along, or did you have instruction?
Books and YouTube.
It sounds to me like it started with you being self-taught, but did you have a mentor in this at all, or were you all just sort of exploring this new place by yourself?
Yes, more so the latter. I knew that this was something you need to approach soberly and carefully, because every single layer of difficulty you come to, like, well, how does this tree come safely down? Let's say it is something that you have to climb. Well, what if you can't climb it? Well, then I need to be able to use a lift. Well, what if you can't get a lift to it? Well, now everything turns into like, as the difficulty goes up, the excitement and the importance in technique and safety, and just having more tools in your tool pouch becomes more and more important. And that race, or that escalation in difficulty, is always the part of this industry that I liked the most. It wasn't until I was pretty darn capable at climbing and rigging out stuff that I started subcontract climbing. And I decided to go do this full time. And that is how I started out, was by subcontract climbing, because who starts a business with enough work in their pocket to keep themselves busy year round?
Right, right. So you started as a side hustle.
Yes.
In addition to, you were working for a landscape and adjacent industry that didn't necessarily have the competencies, but there was a little bit of shared space there that allowed you at least to get more than just a toe into the market, but maybe your whole sort of like foot in the door. And
Specifically at that landscape company, it was that helped me pay my bills. And then this slowly growing, I need to work an extra, 15 hours, 20 hours a week to make progress in life more generally, to get more money so that you can, start putting money aside for your business, or so that you can, maybe own a house someday, would be the dream that me and the missus had. That is where this money came from, or that is where this goal came from. And then eventually it turned into, well, why am I doing the more fun, better paying job on Saturdays and Sundays? I should be doing it, Monday through Thursday too, at least. And that's when I became a subcontract climber. Once I was doing that, I realized that a lot of the companies that I was subcontract climbing for, which it is selection bias, you're only going to work for companies that need a climber. They don't have their own yet. None of them knew their ass from their elbow, and they were all shockingly incompetent.
yeah.
The mentors I had at that time were all YouTube people.
Okay.
Winnicky, guilty of treason. Back then it was East Side though. I loved Trevor Ahern in Florida. He would post long raw videos of him climbing, and he's incredibly competent and efficient.
Yeah, I think
And I'm
Bino.
watching him do his job.
Have you looked at Bino's at all? He's got some great.
Bino H.
Yeah.
I was generally, when I was new, that was fine, but generally unimpressed. I don't mean that to like critique at all, but it wasn't applicable to the things that I was looking to learn, and what I was seeing wasn't particularly challenging, or it wasn't particularly educated. I would say I don't know how educative those videos were for me, and maybe I just missed the good ones too. That's entirely possible.
Yeah, I think he does a good job of explaining a lot of the sort of the rudimentary stuff, and he does it in a nice slow manner. That and I think it's H at the end. I know that he goes by Bino, but I appreciate his content. And to tell you the truth, I appreciate anybody who puts it out there, whether they're like expert at it or not. And there's so many people that grew up and at in this industry at YouTube U. I'll tell you a quick story here, and I think you can probably relate to this. I was at the Western Chapter ISA conference last, I think it was June, with Academy Trained and the Two Tree Guys podcast. And Jared is doing some climbing training, and he's got all this gear, this new gear, SRS stuff, up on the stage. And dude walks up to me and he says, "You want to hear something crazy?" And I'm like, "Give me your crazy, bro." And he says, "Boys, I've been in this industry for 50 years, and I have no fucking clue what this shit is. My guys, we get in trees. We've been doing this for 50 years, bro, and none of us know how to enter a tree." And I'm like, all right, let's take a step back here. Did you just say that you've been doing this for 50 years and nobody knows how to enter a tree? And he goes, "Yeah, I mean, we get in there, but we like throw a ladder up there. We like lanyard up. I mean, all this stuff is so awesome. But my guys, I mean, this is just a different level." And he's grabbing this gear and he's holding it and he's saying, "I have no idea. This is so awesome, but I have no idea. I don't even know where to get how to get the trainer." And I said, all right. And I opened up my phone and I'm like, you're at the conference. So you know that ISA has a calendar, that there's a lot of these, trainings that you can go to. And he said, "Yeah, but they only," and maybe this is what you were saying about Bino's stuff, is it only gets you so far and it's not good enough to get my guys up into a tree safely. So that's why we just use the ladder. And I'm like, all right. And then what about TCIA? You can request training. He's like, "I didn't know that." And I'm like, "Oh, so you're a tree guy and you don't even know your tree guy resources. And this is a problem. And, we need to fix this." And one of the questions I want to get into later is to kind of get your read on how, ISA and TCIA and UAA and the unions are doing and sort of the progress we've made on this. But my point with this story is that this guy was, he was obviously successful. He'd been doing this for years. He's got some people that I mean, he's, you're not going to do this stuff for 50 years and do it unsafely. He's doing good work. But he still had some issues and he couldn't find people to train. And the last thing I told him before he said, "Hey, listen, I got to go pick up this conference so I can get some CUs," is I told him, "Go find a contract climber and you do your research, find a good one, but you're going to find these contract climbers can not only bring some competency to your company that you don't even know exists, because they know some stuff you don't. They can train. A lot of them are like big on leadership and big on safety culture. A lot of them are excellent trainers, and they can help you get, the sketch work that you just wouldn't pick up because they've got the competency to do it." So let's start with, kind of ping off that and tell me where you think the contract climber fits into this bigger picture of tree care beyond just being a tree assassin, which many of them are. They're like tree assassins for hire. They're like special forces. Where do you think
that is kind of?
Yeah,
I like that characterization, not only because it like warms that male spirit that a lot of people who work on site with chainsaws have. Yeah, exactly. So not to downplay that part of my ego, it is an accurate statement to say that the reason why I wanted to start my own tree company and stop subclimbing was because clearly it's not a thing you can do for 20, 30 years. Your body will fail. It was it was exhausting to be only tackling everyone's saltiest, shittiest projects 5 days a week. That sucks. I'm aware right now that of the work that my tree company does, now that we self-fulfill our schedule, we're a busy enough company where we get to work 50 weeks a year. Um, of the jobs that are actually hard, it's probably 5 to 10% of the tree work I do every day that's actually a challenge. The rest of it is just every day it's lamps. That's what everything looks like now, in comparison to what I was doing 5 years ago.
Is that by choice or is that
Oh, it is against my will. I would love more difficult projects because then I am all of a sudden way more affordable to my client base when I'm actually doing something difficult. If I'm doing, I always joke that I can show up on a job site and look at the project and know if I'm getting it or not. If it's a really difficult, hard project, because now I'm dealing with a level of bidding that I am the cheap guy. I'm small, I'm efficient, I'm light. We're less overhead than a bigger company, but still all of the overhead of all the insurance and having real equipment. But I know that I'm going to be half the price of my local A+ tree service, and we offer the same service. We just don't have the 80 years of history behind us.
Yeah. So
But I know that if I'm just notching and dropping trees, that any landscaper can do that, and I might not be competitive anymore. I can't charge $300 an hour if my feet are on the ground all day.
Okay, so to a certain extent, the contract climber is able to do the sketch work, and that's what you
Yeah.
love. And where else
Yes.
where else do you see the contract climber fitting into this
Yeah.
industry?
Yeah. I think that the role that I use them in right now is I want to have positive working relationships with everyone who does my job in my area. I want to have peers. I don't have the mindset of the people that I saw when I was a subcontract climber, where they're worried about you starting your own company someday.
Right.
Where people are always, and I guess that would be like a famine mentality of not enough, a lack mentality. Um, I would lean on them just to have positive working relationships. You mentioned something earlier about having more resources available. I've noticed that as I get better at my job, it no longer looks like me removing trees faster or safer. It looks like me making more friends in my industry. Me being a better business owner looks like me having 7 mechanics instead of 4 mechanics that I can ask and see who's available to fix this today. It looks like me having 30 spots I can drop chips in my area instead of 20. All of that is what improvement looks like for me. Having 3 contract climbers I can call if someone's sick today, instead of 1, maybe. Because right now I am that Navy SEAL level of guy. I'm the young guy I'm the only arborist on staff at my company. It's my name on the truck and it's 2 employees. It's a very, very small company. But I lean on them because I want them to have I want to have a relationship with them. And then if they go and start a big company someday, and they make it, if they want to, if in that direction, I want to have them have positive memories of working with me. When I'm older and I'm not able to do the things I do, I mean, I'm 31, I'm not there yet, but I know that in 10 years, I won't be as fast. I won't be able to do the things that I'm doing consistently right now. And those are things that when I slow down, I'm going to want to hire someone to do the real scary jobs for me if I'm not able to train an employee to take my place as foreman right now. It's nice to have those quote unquote Navy SEALs in the background, that you can call them to show up and do the difficult job for you. And you're going to, me being a business owner now, I know the difficult job, in today's money, I know that on the scary ones that there's $500 to $600 to call in an expert to put it on the ground for you. That isn't impossible, and that totally fits into whatever budget I'm working with now on the job.
So I want to linger
them now, but I would like to.
I want to linger on this a little bit, and we're going to kind of take it back a little bit to career day. And you've got some young guy or gal, didn't know shit about the tree care industry, doesn't know anything about concrete, doesn't know anything about what the unions have to offer, thinking about college, thinking about trade school, thinking about, I don't know, missionary work, whatever it's on their mind. And then thinking about the military. And then they hear this conversation right here. And what they're picking up on is, wait a minute, you got people who climb trees for a living. You got people who do this really technical, uh, scary work that are kind of like tree assassins and kind of like
Biological physics.
like special forces. And wait a minute, they climb trees for a living, and they're in demand and they're unique, and there's this whole leadership aspect of it that it maybe appeals to them because they look at the military and they're like, man, I'd love to lead a crew. I'd love to be a part of a crew that has important frickin' work to do. I would like to
Sure.
develop myself into a person where I can maybe lead these people. And this is one of the things that I want to kind of drive home. That opportunity absolutely exists in tree care, and I'm not sure that you get that in all the other trades. There may be elements of it, maybe with electrical work when dealing with linemen, but and the more technical the work gets in tree care, in areas like utility line clearance, dropping the big monsters post fire in the Sierras. The people that you're working with, there's a culture in the tree care industry that I think is really unique. Could you speak to that a little bit and maybe kind of ping off the vibe that I was putting out there?
Yeah, I'll resound it back and let me know if I'm on the same page. There is a unique thing that is found in our job where, when you show up because you're the one who's going to put their ass up in the tree, and it's not like you're working any harder than anyone else. The groundwork crew is very difficult too for them to do their job excellently. You call the shots when you go up there. It's coming down the way you want it to, and if you don't have a plan, you should not go up. And if you don't have the skills or the ability to bluff having the skills, no one will put you up there. And I absolutely fell in love with that aspect of it. I realized as soon as I showed up and started doing it, and I found that I could, I liked that it was my decisions that would then bring the big scary project down correctly. I had a pretty darn good track record. I never broke anything until it was my name on the truck and it was my jobs. um, but absolutely, when you're the person who's up in that tree, you make the calls, and it was really rewarding for me to be in charge of grown men regularly and very, politely with good leadership skills, not to be a power hungry tyrant or anything like that. But that is something that exists uniquely here because there is no other way. I could not imagine having one of my employees go up in a tree and then me telling them how they're going to be taking it down, or like I can give them feedback on a trim, like say, hey, what about that? I think you're missing a little piece over here. I'd like to thin it out on this side. You can't really see that from up there. But I do not have any, I cannot influence and tell them how they're going to remove this tree as soon as they're skilled enough to do it on their own. Maybe if this is like a training situation, but that's different. And that is something that is unique to this because I don't think that exists in plumbing and electrical. Like I know a lot about some of the other trades. I was raised in a carpentry background, but carpentry doesn't have ringers for like, hey, this gable really sucks. Let's call in the good crew to come put the gables up for us today. That doesn't really exist.
Yeah, there's something in sort of training theory that I don't think that gets taught enough is the value of intuition. And I have noticed it in certain high risk industries where people develop a level of intuition. And let's be fair, we don't frickin' know what intuition is. It seems like a sixth sense or some sort of a mystical power. What it is that you're tapping into all of the subconscious knowledge that you have and then finding a way to apply it in the real world. And it's really unique. And I experienced it in the Coast Guard all the time, working buoys, taking a small boat out in heavy seas, doing, fisheries boardings off Georgia's banks. And, I could tell people, I'm like, we're going to go work this aid. Captains let us go 50 miles away from the cutter. I'm going to get us there in about 2 hours, and I'm going to make the buoy appear in front of you. out of like magic and watch me do that in the fog. And I could do it, and I was cocky, and I knew I was good at it, but I was also teaching them, uh, the basics. But also there's so much intuition, so much sort of like this internal knowledge that it's just hard to put your finger on, that exists in certain industries. It exists in anytime you operate machinery. So operators understand this. If you're a crane operator, if you're like I drove icebreakers in the Coast Guard. It's like heavy equipment operation. You develop this sixth sense, and you've got knowledge, skills, attitudes, and abilities. We tend to think of those in the training industry as being, sort of the way we describe, what people have in their heads and in their hands in order to do something. But what we don't do is we talk much about that intuition and where that comes from. So I like to throw that in the mix. And I would describe tree work as being one of those industries where intuition comes into play. And this is where people get in flow, and you can't quite put your finger on why you know something. Like blowing a top out of a tree. When you're up there, I'm sure that you've got a sense to how that's going to happen, and you might not be able to explain all the physics of it. You get a sense to how your crew is responding on the ground, and you might not be able to put the psychology to it. You get a sense to how the whole thing is going to play out in your head, but you couldn't diagram it on a piece of paper. Maybe you could, but you'd have to spend some time and think about it. Let's spend some time on this. Tell me what you think the role of intuition is with tree care, and the kind of work.
Yeah, I think that my opinion on that differs a little bit from yours.
Really.
I would account my intuition as little data points that I'm collecting as I do my job, or that I'm seeing, whether I'm in the tree or I'm on the ground, that there's things that I'm aware of, either based on past experiences or just, knowledge of what's going to happen if I do X, Y, or Z. One of the things I like to tell my guys is that, like, hey, as long as you have a plan as to like, this should happen and I think this will happen, you're probably right. And then if that plan strays by 10 or 15%, you'll learn and adjust your plan accordingly. Because without this sounding like a cocky statement, usually I know what's going to happen. And anytime I'm off by like 3 or 4 or 5%. And then I adjust it, and then that doesn't happen again next week. You dial yourself in over the course of a career of not breaking shit, is the way that I would phrase it. An intuition might be, hey, I'm up in this top and it looks like it's going this way, or like, it's look like it's leaning north, and I should probably blow the top north. And if that's not an option, well, guess where we're going to top now. Knowing which way something's leaning is probably if it's pretty central, it's not obvious. That's probably something that experience helps you collect as you're going up the tree, and as you get a couple more under your belt. One of the ways that I like to check a new employee is asking them and letting them know that they are to act and move forward based on their own comfort level. Because eventually your comfort level will tell you that you're venturing into a spot where you either think that you're going to make a mistake, and maybe you can't articulate why. That's fine. I hope you know. And then the other one would be, you've collected enough stuff and enough information, if you're the one trimming the tree right now, or doing the removal, that something's going wrong and you don't know what it is. So you should stop and slow down. And if you can't put your words on it yet, that's fine. But I need to know that your brain works well enough. Maybe we call this common sense, but I need to know that you'll slow down and you'll not do something and hope it works. I always tell guys that they're not allowed to do anything, and they're not allowed to do anything where they hope it works. Hope is not a plan. Hope might work 95% of the time, but if I act with a 5% room for error, I will be out of business by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I don't get to take a 1% chance, honestly.
Well, your intuition could be wrong, and then hope works. But it's those moments when the intuition is right, and you think that something might go wrong, and hoping it doesn't, It's a really poor strategy. So I was working an aid. It was off the coast of Maine, I believe, or maybe Massachusetts. And I had my crew with me in the boat. I've got an engineer, female engineer, just this tiny little thing, but she was kick ass. And then I had my ATON tech, that's aids to navigation tech. This is the guy that I put on the buoy, and he climbs it and he does the servicing on it. And the seas were about 4 feet, so it was starting to pick up a little bit. And we make it to this buoy, and we're driving up to it. And you got to be real careful as you're dropping someone off, because the buoy's moving around, and you've got a fiberglass boat with a sponson, pontoon around it that you can kind of, fender off with. But the sea's going to push you where the sea's going to push you, and you can easily, fuck your boat up in a hurry. So you got to be careful when you're approaching it to drop this person off. And this one was a jet boat, and it's got a bucket on it that you operate to go forward and reverse. And something wasn't quite right. And the tech is about ready to jump on the buoy, and there was nothing wrong with the boat, but something was triggering my spider sense. And I yelled to my engineer, get him off the buoy. And she reaches up and grabs him by the backpack and yanks him backwards. And the two of them fall on their backs on the floor of the boat. And at that moment, I lost steering. And
Sure.
The only way that I could navigate the boat to safety was to keep going backwards and forwards by moving the bucket, because my steering was locked over.
Yeah.
And I navigated up to about a quarter mile away to a lobster pot, and then we anchored to the lobster pot, and then it took 4 hours to the cutter to get to us, and we drug a lot, and we were maybe 100 yards from the rocks when we got picked up. It was a sketch situation. And that's an example of, I don't know what I was experiencing, and I had some crazy intuition, enough to tell my engineer, pull him off the buoy now. And then we lost the steering. Yeah, and that's just a good example of, and this is maybe why I feel so strongly about intuition, and maybe maybe there's room for disagreement on the role of it, but there are times when intuition is something that you just absolutely need to trust. And I agree with you when you say hope isn't a strategy. I shouldn't have put somebody on that buoy and hoped that it'd be okay.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah. And
that's not okay.
For those individuals who are looking for work like that, I mean, you could join the Coast Guard, you could join the military, but tree care offers a lot of that too.
Yes. The similar overlap I'm hearing in that story is that there are a lot of things and a lot of opportunities where there will not be a second chance. You will not get a second chance necessarily if you crush that guy into the buoy because you got pushed too hard. What I would say is that intuition is important and it absolutely plays a role. I would slightly differ on the source of it. I think the source comes from data that you're collecting without knowing, or I do not rule out an unconditionally loving God. Hoping you keep your boys safe.
Who knows what it is? I mean, it could be any number of different things. Something is speaking through you, whether it's a God or whether it's your own inner voice.
Because I would definitely say that one of the things that's very important to me in my leadership of my team is to let them know that they are to listen to their spidey sense. They have every right to if I'm about to do something, they're like, oh, hey, hold on, Tim. I want you to tell me what you're about to do again. Oh, boss, tell me what's going to happen. I need to know what this is. I want to check in because I'm feeling weird about this. I encourage them to use their intuition because it might save my life someday. And certainly mine, I do listen to it. The source of it would be the thing that I don't think it's quite so ethereal. I don't believe in coincidences. And it's either data or a higher power.
Yeah, it could be, or both. Let's linger on the safety culture a little bit.
Certainly.
You hit on one of the most important things about building safety culture in an organization, which is that you've got ownership and management commitment to it.
Yeah.
How how do you, other than just articulating to your crew members, I expect you to trust your intuition. I expect you to speak up. I expect all of this from you. It's
Yes.
not just I encourage it. It's like you damn well better do it if you're going to be on this
Oh
crew.
yeah.
Other than that sort of explicit um mandate for safety culture, how do you build it in your organization? What do you recommend?
Um, I feel embarrassed because I will start by saying, um, it might have been Mike Rowe where someone coined the phrase "safety third." I believe that that message. If I really wanted to be safe, I would stay at home and lay in bed wearing a helmet. That is, and you'll like this one, Coast Guard. Ships are safest in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. There is a certain amount of use and consumability to my life and my choice of lifestyle and my career where I will expect some amount of acceptable breakage. That isn't something I pitch my client, my customers on very, very hard. But no one gets out of here alive. I think that this is the best use of my time and my resources and the abilities that I've been given by my creator. And there is a certain amount of trust that exists with me going up every tree because it's a biological thing. It's not engineered. Yes, they're pretty damn strong. And yes, I've seen them be very, very, very reliable. But my comfort comes from me watching thousands of videos of people doing that very same thing. And then me, myself doing it for 7 years and having everything go pretty darn predictably, I would say, in almost every single day. That being said, so that's the point I start at. I am safety minded. I am terrified of my employees injuring themselves. I don't have a reckless disregard at all for my own health, but I am accepting that someday all of my heroes have fallen out of a tree like almost once. That might happen, and it's going to be because of my complacency. It might be an equipment failure, but it's going to be because I belayed right off my rope, or I thought it would be fine. I only tied it once and I cut my climb line. Those are things that I don't have the idea that I'm better than them, and I won't make that mistake. I probably could. I'm very fallible. The things that help me guard against that, though, is the terror of the thought of what if they got injured and it was my mistake. And during their first weeks here, every new employee, I share with them how the life they save might be their own when they behave carefully and soberly and they think things through. And the thing that I think I heard you mention it was the ownership that happens over their own actions. There's only so much I can equip someone to do in offering them my experience. So if I ever see something happening where I'm like, hey, just so you know, you're not allowed to do that again. I've seen a lot of injuries happen when I was a subcontract climber, because those were companies that were less well put together, is the way I would put it. Those are injuries that I've never seen happen here. And I've passed them along to everyone on my crew, and I let them know how injuries happen. I don't know who started this idea, but I found truth in the concept that in order for you to have one close call, you have to have 10, I'm sure it'll be fines. And after you have 10, I'm sure it'll be fines, you'll have one close call, but nothing happened. Then after you have 10 close calls, a piece of equipment will break. It was a close call, and every 10th one, you actually, you cracked a fence post, or, you damaged a piece of equipment. And then for every 10 pieces of equipment that you damage, so you're already 1,000, 100 close calls in, someone's going to get injured. And then for every 10 injuries, so 1,000 close calls, that's when you have a real injury. Someone could die. I have found it to be true. Yeah. And you can tighten your shit up and get your ship sailing right and have 5 close calls a year, not 1,000. And if you're okay with the close calls, you are implicitly inviting in the injuries later on down the line. You can run a tight ship, and you can say, the way it feels to me when I see a close call happen is I go, dang, I don't like getting lucky. I'm usually grateful nothing got injured. I'm grateful I didn't crack a window or something. But I don't like that feeling of like, hey, that was out of my control, and I'm lucky that it didn't hit my outrigger when it fell.
Right.
I'm not okay with getting lucky. I'm grateful when it happens, that I didn't have to like learn my lesson and take my medicine the hard way.
Yeah.
But I don't like that feeling at all.
You can study mishaps, and it's great to study mishaps.
Yeah.
But probably, at least in my opinion, what's more important to study is the near misses. And not even the near misses, but thinking about what could go wrong. In my training with PG&E and other companies, I have this little exercise we run where we take a look at different operations and we say what could go wrong. And we think of all the different ways that things could go wrong, and then reflect on how close did we get to being that guy where it went wrong in our operations. The pre-brief, and this speaks to the importance of the job planning, the job briefing, your JSA, all of this, and then updating it as things change during the day, and then which I think a lot of companies don't do is debriefing it at the end. To get together and do a hot wash and say,
Yeah.
how did we do? And let's be freaking critical as we can about it. And I want to push back just one little bit on where you said that the ship, and this, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm pushing back on the idea that the ship is safest in the harbor. And I'm going to say, and I think this is kind of where you're getting at. A ship is safe in the harbor, not during a hurricane, though. Not during a storm. You got to get it away from the pier. It's actually going to be safer out at sea, where you're going to get your ass handed to you at the pier. Been there, done that. The other thing is, and this is I think a point that you were going to make, or we're sort of making tangentially, is that a ship at the pier doesn't get exercised, and it's the ship at sea that gets to experience those close calls and the near misses and the almost happened but didn't happen, the opportunities to debrief. The more of those you have, the better you're going to get at being able to identify where you're going to get better at avoiding them. And this plays into the safety third. And the whole point behind safety third was, it's not a checklist, and it's not a title, and it's not a, air quoting safety culture. It's personal responsibility, and it's actually thinking about safety and not just going through the motions at all. And the more you do all, the better you get at it. Go ahead.
Because I know that if I make a mistake and I cripple someone, I'm going to have to live with that forever. Even though my back is fine. I dropped a log on someone and killed them. I'm fine.
Yeah.
That is not an acceptable turn of events. That would be very, very hard to live with. And I don't want to do that. So maybe it even comes from, I feel that it is my duty to love the people around me. And on a job site, that looks like 100 different things in the employer-employee relationship. But it is absolutely, I have to protect them and keep them safe and equip them and tell them that the best type of security that they can have to go home safe to their families is to not do anything they're uncomfortable with, because I trust that their brain works correctly and that they know when they're walking into disaster and that they should stop. Their boss is not telling them to close their eyes and disregard data and just do it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I've had the privilege of removing 2 trees that killed the previous person who tried to work on them. This happened twice in my area, really disproportionately. Both times I was able to inspect the project or pull the police report afterwards, because that's all publicly available information. And then I asked the homeowner, hey, is this what the tree looked like before I'm seeing it? Because half of it was missing both times. And the mistakes that they made that killed them were willfully walking into oblivion. Now, what I mean by that is you can make 1 or 2 mistakes and nothing will go wrong. You can make 3 or 4 mistakes and you'll have a close call. You can make 5 or 6 mistakes and now you're going to break your skid steer or hurt something or hit a house. But if you make 7, 8, or 9 mistakes in a row, you might not go home today. And I don't, I'm not hoping to speak ill of the dead. And I don't think that this waters down the tragedy that their loved ones experienced when they are not here anymore. But there's a certain amount of disregard and disrespect for the life that you live in this career path, that if you think it's okay to keep doing that, I can't help you. I don't know what else you expected to happen.
Yeah.
Both of them were so obviously like, you can't do those 7 things in a row and expect to go home safely. I don't know how you got away with it, because both of them were over 40. I don't know how you got away with it this long if this is how you run your business. Holy
Yeah,
cow.
and a hint for somebody when they're entering into that danger zone is that if you're feeling that it's not for you, it might not be for you. Just because you stand down from a particular operation, let's say that, the company owner said, "Hey, we got to put someone on the hook, and we need to put, a climber on the crane, and we're going to do it this way." You may not feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, and
it,
I love in our industry. I heard this so many times on all of the subcontractor climber, like think of Reddit, the Reddit forums for
Mhm.
climbing trees. I heard everyone like and I thought it was millennials mostly. It's my generation saying, "Tell your boss to shove it. If it's your ass in the tree, you're in charge." And I think that I've carried that into my company. And I think that that is really prevalent in our industry, that if you're the one up there risking yourself, you get to make the calls to keep yourself safe. And if not, you walk away, because your job is, you're a highly paid professional doing a difficult thing, and you have every right to demand things be done your way and up to your standards.
Right.
I hear that everywhere, and that is absolutely the best way to keep yourself safe as the
And
guy who's doing it.
and if you say no to a job, if you say, "I don't feel comfortable doing that," it's great.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's not safe to do that job within reason. It doesn't mean that you're right, except that you're probably right that you shouldn't do it
I
because
agree entirely.
your
Yes,
your
that's
your
accurate.
your your attitude is, and I hate to say the attitude, and that sounds like I'm, attitude in sort of a negative way. Your mindset is such
Mindset, sure.
that you shouldn't probably be doing that. And
Yes.
it takes a big man to say, "You know what? I don't think I should do that." And it doesn't mean that you're weak. And it also doesn't mean that it's unsafe to do it. It may be that someone
Correct.
else should be doing it. Um,
Yeah, there are, we as men working in this field will have to say to ourselves and to and to prospective customers sometimes, I might not be the right person for your project, or I might not be the right company for your project. For me right now, that looks like, hey, I have too much overhead. I can't be cheap enough to chip this pile of brush that you want me to come out and chip. It's a running joke in my head that, like, I just want to tell everyone who asks me to chip a pile of brush, the answer is no. I'm going to tell you, it costs me $100 an hour to send a person out there to chip brush for you. And everyone wants it to cost. I've never sold a pile of brush for more than like $200. No one is willing to pay. No one's willing to pay tree guy prices to have that work done. And that's okay. They're not wrong, and I'm not wrong, and I'm not a jerk because I charge too much, and they're not a jerk because they're cheap. We're just not meant to do business together, and that's okay. I like that you mentioned that prospective tree climber, no matter how much experience he has, maybe he's younger, maybe he's older. If he's looking at a job and says, "I don't think this is safe for me," he's right. And he should let someone else who thinks it is safe for them to do it. And that's not an insult. That's not a knock. That's fine. I don't want anyone working on my job site doing a difficult thing unless they're confident that they have the skills and ability. And like I've equipped them with the equipment too, for employees, that unless they know what they're doing and they're confident in it, I don't want them doing it either. I that sense of personal agency that they need is absolutely something that it is my job
Mhm.
as a boss to foster on my job sites.
Okay,
Because
good.
we've seen managers stomp it out of people, and that is poor management for sure.
Want to give you some rapid fire questions here.
Sure.
We hit on building a safety and training culture and how personal responsibility, um,
Paramount.
and yeah, is and not just thinking about safety and training as buzzwords that fall under some I don't know, HR program,
Sure.
taking it seriously. What makes a good crew lead?
Um, I think a good crew lead needs to. I'm going to preface this by saying a question. Are you familiar with Jocko Willink and his podcast and his whole extreme, essentially
Ownership. Yeah.
extreme ownership? That is a style of leadership that, when I heard it, struck me deeply and meant a lot to me. The owner, the leader, is the person who wants. Your job is to get the project done safely, efficiently, under budget, whatever that means, whatever success looks like in that situation. It's your job to make sure it happens. The big skills that a leader needs is the ability to. I can't imagine a leader not being a teacher. I can't imagine a leader not being someone who probably did the job underneath of them, so they know what it's like and they know where the difficulties are. They're going to be willing to humble themselves and do the shittiest job that no one wants to do. That's what my leadership, I hope, looks like. That's a good question for my employees, though, as to whether or not I can do the hard job. But whatever it takes for things to happen faster or safer, or to do the hard job, and maybe in a future business where it's not just the guy who owns the company is on the job every single day, that leader, hypothetically, if things grow and double in the next 10 years, he's going to have to come to me, the boss, and let me know what I'm doing wrong. He needs to speak bravely for, like, hey, this person over here, they're having some conflicts, and this person needs to get they need to be tightened up they need the wrath of God put into them. This person needs to get fired. This person is not able to do this. This person needs help. This guy's been going through a really rough time, and you need to give him a paid week off, boss. Being able to take care of your guys is huge.
To the people out there who go, oh, this is too strict. People die in this industry every day. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're hearing a little bit of, we take this shit seriously, it's because we take this shit seriously. And if you're sitting in an office job, it ain't the same. So just want to put that back into perspective there. That many people are not going to appreciate the extreme ownership approach. There's a reason they don't appreciate it, and it's because people go home every night in their line of work. And in this line of work and in other lines of work, it's a different ballgame. So I'm just reminding the audience of that.
Certainly. The last two things are going to be, and I hope this doesn't sound too hippy-dippy, they need to love their employees. That is where all of my personal growth is coming from. Cutting down trees of any size, shape, or difficulty right now is old. It's all very familiar. The things that I'm growing in is how to grow. I only have male employees. How to grow men, and if my definition of love is wanting what is best for someone. If that's not with my company, that's okay. I love my employees and I want them to grow as men. That gets weird when they're older than me, but I want them to get better, and I want them to continue to grow and to get better life skills and get more money in their pockets. That's my chief goal. And I want them to go home safely. That type of leadership style is something that I haven't found yet, which is why I'm still going to be the guy out in the field every single day. And if I do find that in someone, I'm going to open up the pathway for them to become a leader at my company. And I'm willing to have that happen, and we'll see if it does.
So what makes because they're different jobs, what makes a good second or a good lieutenant?
For that one, I'm going to say that is someone who the primary goal there is going to be competency. That role is a little bit less teaching, but I like everyone on my job sites to be patient and able to teach the new guy, because then I don't have to as much. But that primary goal is going to be competency. Back to the decentralized command concept, where it's not my job to micromanage everyone as the business owner, or maybe as the leader, or maybe as the foreman, or as the lieutenant. You need to be able to put people in charge of something and trust that they're doing it well, that they've been equipped to do it well, that they have everything they need to do it safely, and that they've been trained correctly. And that if that's not the case, then it's the leader's job to correct whatever is holding them back from that, or correct them if they're constitutionally incapable of doing it. That lieutenant position is largely someone who is going to be the tip of the spear of getting work done. I think, if I'm not mistaking the position, that's going to be someone who I'm putting in my loader all day. And his job is to make sure that if there's a lot of stuff in front of the chipper, he chips it up. If there's a lot of wood on the ground, it's his job to pick it up and make sure it goes in the dump trailer. He's much more production focused, and me equipping him to do a good job at his job is more like making sure he's trained and properly motivated, is what I've seen in my career path. For the most part, properly motivated is, if you get your work done fast enough, there's always an incentivized reason for you to do it. Beyond just, you get to go home earlier. It's almost always, there's going to be more money in your pocket this week if we hit 115% of what I expected us to do instead of 100%.
How about your backup climber? Do you want your lieutenant to be a good backup climber?
Not necessary, no. I will say that I think the talent pool in my area and my ability to afford talent is shallow enough that having someone who's that good just be sitting around and not being the tip of the spear is not likely.
Do you think they're going to move into the pointy end of the spear role quicker if they've got those competencies?
You are exactly correct. Back to my idea of, I want what's best for them. As soon as someone is a good backup climber at my company, they either need to be a full-time climber at my company and making that type of money, or I want them to move on somewhere else where they will make that money. And if they have those skills, they need to use them.
It does not ever replace the need for the backup climber, because that's your your aerial rescue guy. Or you take a different approach to aerial rescue, and maybe you look at how you're rigging your lines. Maybe you're using, a basal anchor rig so that you can.
We use basal anchors. The answer,
okay.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Because realistically, the pie in the sky dreaming of there are 2 people on this job site who are competent climbers is just a future that I don't see on the horizon anytime soon. The talent pool would be that thin. And really, if someone is a competent climber, they need to be making a lot more. And if they're making that much money, well, they need to be climbing now. Like the two things, they both compete against each other. Having the skills and then having the paycheck means you need to be using that skill too. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you have the skill, you need to get paid for it. And as soon as you're getting paid for it, well, now you need to be productive for it for you to be at my company, if that makes sense.
So what makes for a good groundsman?
The primary thing that I'm teaching now is you need to have a basic level of competency for, this is how I'm going to use the equipment that my boss is providing. My chipper, my loader, drive my trucks. Those are things that are usually able to be taught pretty darn well within 4 weeks. The things that you find out whether this person is good at their job outside of learning those basic skills, it's always, are you looking to get off this job site faster? Is this 8-hour job something that you're going to help me do in 7? What I've found is that it is incredible. I should say, I came into this believing that because all my employees are hourly, I don't have salary employees, it would be unreasonable for me to expect someone to do 8 hours of work in 7 hours, because that is against their best interest. Just money in the bank. That is not what benefits them the most. In fact,
unless you pay them for it.
Exactly. Yes. Because what benefits them most is taking 10 hours to do 8 hours of work, because now they did 8 hours of work and they made $10, 10 hours worth. That is why at my company, it has been very important to me to incentivize people in ways that actually benefit them and me as the business owner. I'm at a spot right now where my time is very, very limited. It's a cliche for a reason. I'm a young business owner that I'm trying to be the main foreman at every job, but then also run a company. And those are 2 different full-time jobs.
Right.
I am aware that me incentivizing my guys to get home sooner is what I need from them. and it benefits me tremendously. And the thing that you mentioned is exactly how I've chosen to do it right now, that we regularly work 33 hours a week. And every Monday, they know what hitting rate that week looks like. And if we get that 40 hours of work done at 11 a.m. on Thursday, guess what we're doing? We're not working Friday and we're going home on Thursday. I made my money for the week. I'm not greedy. I'm trying to make enough, not more. So once I make enough, you guys make enough and you can go home to your families too. That's how I've structured my company because of my needs. They do revolve around me as the business owner. If someone was a young, very good at their job, and if to make 52 hours a week worth of money, I don't have that role available at my job, at my company right now. I don't have $46. I don't have 46 hours worth of work a week available for them. Because I'm looking to be done on Thursday so that I get the other stuff done.
Unless you get the T&E contract, and then you're looking at a different kind of employee.
That is correct. I've never had those yet, but that is a thing to look into. The other possibility, once we're busier, I'm not a big enough company that I have more work than I can shake a stick at. I'm always looking for more. We're growing. We're not big enough yet. There will be a future where they work 40 at 11 a.m. on Thursday because they kicked ass that week. And then I tell them, hey, on Friday, you're doing this now. And now you're getting time and a half after that on top of your 40. So basically some bonus pay on top. Because if you make me 50 hours worth of money in 40 hours, you're getting, as you mentioned, you're getting paid for 50. That sense of fairness is very important to me. And that incentivizing of them to work harder and be more efficient and smarter and stronger and capable, because there's a difference between taking 20 water breaks in a day and taking 11. And I'm never going to tell someone you can't have 20 water breaks, but I will incentivize them to bust their butts and get work done faster.
Mm-hmm.
But within their own ability to be safe too, because haste does make waste, and I'm never going to push them beyond what their own ability to push themselves is. I leave it up to that.
Do you use a lift or spider lift or bucket truck?
We have a spider lift.
Okay. So are you on the?
Are the two ways that I get up there.
Are you a pro spider lift? Because that's kind of a polarizing subject in the tree carriers. Pro spider lift or anti spider lift? You're pro?
Definitely pro. The only downside to it would be they do allow people to get into the industry and feel like they know what they're doing before they actually do. There is a lot of stuff that I'm very grateful I could only afford. I'm grateful that the first 4 years I could only afford to climb double rope system. And now that when I climb single rope, I'm really grateful at how efficient it is. The same thing with a bucket. I am grateful every single day that I get to use my lift because I remember how much pain everything would have cost me if I didn't have the lift available to get it done in 4 hours, because I know it would be 9 hours of climbing. You also learn good practices. A lot of trimming really needs to be done by a guy inside of the tree, because you can just see how people just really over prune the heck out of stuff, or they leave like a bare hole where you can see they clearly got the basket in that way, and that is so
you get a different answer.
No.
I think Jepson had an article, or maybe he mentioned it in the Tree Climbers Companion, about how people who grew up pruning in the bucket world or the lift world, they just have like a different aesthetic. There's a different approach. There's like, for lack of a better word, like the old Farfignugan, the relationship between the man and the machine in the Volkswagen commercials from the 80s or 90s. There's a lack of Farfignugan in some of these people who, when it comes to their pruning techniques that are, do you find that true for those people who grew up in bucket world, or?
I don't know enough people to give an honest opinion on that. I do know that all of the best people I look up to on the internet and the couple of very excellent climbers that I know and have hired, they all started climbing. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a certain amount of, for me, it's mostly a point of gratitude that I get to use my equipment. I'm so grateful that I can afford this machine. And now that I'm trying to be more efficient and production focused in my daily duties, the lift is non-negotiable now. I will always have a lift at my company.
What
I'll
about
never
what about
complain
grapple
about that.
saws? What about grapple saws? Are you moving in that direction, or because a lot of big companies are BIK? I went to their factory. I was about 2 years ago with Jared Abergina, and we did some podcasts there and got to tour the factory and talk to Elmer, and great company, by the way. The work that they put into tailoring a piece of equipment for a client is top notch, and I think that's why they're doing so well. But there are other companies that do well with grapple trucks as well. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, tell me where you're headed with that. And
What I'm seeing on the small business mindset, small business outlook on whether that's a piece of equipment I want to bring onto my job sites. Renting one for specific jobs is attainable,
Mhm.
but if I'm being honest, they would eat up all of the profit on any of the jobs that I'm actually competitive for.
Okay.
So if I am looking at like a really difficult $3,600 project, we're going to be there for 9 hours, and there's some tricky pieces. When they need 900 to 1200 of it, I would rather just do it slower and do it myself carefully. Because that's always been a possibility for every single tree I've ever looked at. There could be one where I absolutely need one to unlock that tree as a tree that I can be competitive for, but I haven't seen that yet.
Do you do most of your work in tight quarters, like in urban areas or in rural areas?
Um, Suburbs. I'm in the suburbs of Milwaukee, so it's not city. I don't work at city.
More room to work with. A little more room to
There
work
is,
then.
yeah, there is. You have to be careful. Parking is always a consideration, but it's never city. It's not city level, and it's definitely not rural where we get to just drive on the grass or something like that. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen either.
Places like Chicago, New York, and where you're working in tight quarters, that's where I think people are
I could really see that as being
left with
a more necessary tool. For me, I absolutely am aware how it could up my productivity and help me get work done faster. Right now, what that would immediately do then is I would run out of work. And yeah, I'm only booking work out 3 weeks, and I buy a grapple saw. And not only is that a huge investment into it's going to be 2 to 400,000. Um, I wouldn't want that because I would be out of work in a week and a half because I don't want to do my jobs faster. I would have to have a lot more leads and a lot more work booked out for me to then justify buying something to help me do it faster. I hope to have that problem someday. That would be beautiful if in 5 years I was trying to get all of this work, or I was trying to get to all of these jobs that I have these contracts for. But that's simply not the problem we're facing. We are already, as we get more efficient, because my crew that I have, they get better every month. Everyone's been here for about a year now. So it's not lifers yet. It's always there's a little bit of churn pretty regularly. We're getting pretty darn efficient. And I'm aware that if we get a lot more efficient, we're just going to run out of work because we're only 3 weeks out right now. So me getting my jobs done faster is a thing that a grapple saw would do, but that's actually not a problem I'm looking to solve right now, if that makes sense.
Right.
And as for the safety it brings, that's not really necessary. We're able to safely tackle and efficiently tackle everything right now.
And it takes some pretty flexible financing for a lot of companies to be able to make that piece of equipment, given the cost of it, fit. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of these companies are coming up with some interesting ways to finance where you're just paying for the hours of the machine rather than per month. Um, so I mean, you could always reach out to BIK or talk to Hans at New Jersey Crane or Jared with American Knuckleboom Arborists out here in California. These are the guys that really know the ins and outs of that and apply it and to see where that piece of equipment might fit in there. I want to be respectful of your time. If I could, I want to give you a couple more rapid fire questions.
Let's do 5 or 10 more minutes. Yeah.
Okay, great. What makes a good new guy?
That is a good question. Very specifically, it would be the willingness to learn is the only thing I need. I've had lots of great new guys that aren't even in that good a shape and aren't even that hard of workers, if that makes sense. I want you to be able to keep yourself safe, for you to be able to tackle the things that I put you in charge of. because for the most part at my company, I've never hired someone with the agreement that they're going to be my new lead climber. That's not where I'm at. It's always ground guy. I want you to rake. I want you to clean up. I want you to see problems as they happen and see if you're able to fix them and help address them. I want you to be here for a couple of weeks and know that every project kind of happens about the same way. The demo happens and we're cleaning up as it happens. And then once it's done, Tim comes down and he helps you clean up too. Your ability to get a sense of that rhythm and then help it happen faster is what makes you a good hire. After that, you're just putting on muscles that you get better and faster at it. And you're putting on abilities that, well, now I can drive the Bobcat too. Right. Now I remember which piece of equipment Tim's referring to when he says, get me the green climb line out of the truck. Those are all things that are specific to my company. Learning how to drive my loader, learning how to drive my trucks. Anyone who's willing to learn and I have to admit, there's a certain amount of competency that sometimes people can't learn how to drive a truck safely. And me as a business owner, it's my job to find that out and ask you to go somewhere else. But that's all you really need to do is you need to be willing to learn. And that the more you're willing to learn and the more useful you are to me as your employer makes you more valuable, and you'll make more money and you'll have more fun here because I'll be more happy to see you here.
Yeah. So I think the guy or gal who stands back and looks at their rake job has a smile on their face and they feel like they accomplished something, that right there is a sign to me that they fucking get it. When I was in chief in the Coast Guard, I used to get these new crew members that some of them had master's degrees and they were just biding their time waiting to go to school or become officers or whatever. And we'd be painting the ship and it was shitty work and hot and you get paint all over yourself. And they would say, listen, Chief, I'll do my job, but I'm going to be moving on. And honestly, I feel like this work is kind of beneath me. And my advice was always, listen, pal, you get one chance in this Coast Guard to do a job that you think is beneath you and that requires very little training and very little skill. And you have to ask yourself, do you want to be the guy who can do a job that's beneath you and requires very little skill and very little training? And you want to be the guy who can do it, or do you want to be the guy who does it poorly? Yeah. And often they would just stop and go, yeah, I get it now. I get it.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, go do your.
Do you want to be the type of teammate that you wish you had?
Yeah.
And no matter how easy or small the project is, the answer is always, you will be faced with the opportunity or the choice whether you're going to be the man you want to be or not. It is that simple.
Yep.
They're faithful in the little things is what we might say.
So what makes a good employer?
The only way I can answer that is by learning from the mistakes of the people who I would consider bad managers or bad employers, because I am lumping them up in the same answer. Being willing to do the work that no one else wants to do, and then knowing that there's a certain amount of, maybe the word would be like leadership capital, that when you ask people to do stuff that is above the middle line of how difficult their job is, that you're aware that you're burning a little bit of leadership capital every time you need someone to do that 95-degree painting job day.
Yeah.
Me knowing that if we're working at the bottom of a hill and it's 89 degrees and they have to drag all of the brush to the chipper that's up there. Yes, your job is to drag brush here. Yes, that is in your job description. It is your job to do that. Yes, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that, we'll find a way that you don't have to drag brush today. No, you're here to do that. But me thinking that, yep, you showed up and did your job today. That's all you're owed. Here's your $23 an hour for dragging brush. That day burnt a lot of leadership capital. Yeah. And if I'm not aware of, the other term I might use is group morale. Yeah. If you're not aware that there's that ever dwindling or growing supply of morale in your team, then you are an incompetent leader and a fool.
Yeah.
And it will lead with you eventually.
It puts your crew lead in a really tough spot. I was on one ship and I had two captains on that ship. Actually 3, but 2 that I spent time with. One was replaced by the other. And I remember this one captain where I could walk up to my crew and say, listen, guys, I got some bad news. this is going to suck. And we got to spend the next 2 weeks doing this. But I can promise you this captain's got your back, and I got your back, and we're going to get you back. And they trusted me, and they knew that I wasn't flipping shit at them. I got this next captain where I had to walk up and say, I got some bad news. We have to do this. And I never badmouthed the captain, but they knew that I knew, and I knew that they knew that no one had their backs, and that it was just all going to be taken. And it was such a completely different dynamic and environment for me as essentially a crew lead. It was hard, and you do your best as the leader that in your position to handle that, but oftentimes it's just a losing battle, and it's only a matter of time until the morale collapses, and then people stop paying attention. All kinds of things go wrong, and the next thing you know, shit goes south. So my final question for you: what makes for a good client? What makes for a good, good client?
That's interesting because my standards for my clients and expectations are really low. I leave room for them to just do whatever they want, and everything's fine with me as long as they can clearly communicate what they want me to do, because then I'll do it. And then as long as their check clears at the end, I'm out. There's a lot of garbage that I will very much put up with because I'm looking to get that 5-star review and I want them to be happy with me at the end. So as long as they're able to communicate what they're looking for, because then I can clearly communicate back if I'll off the bat. As long as things don't change and they're reasonably stable, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna be happy. There's 100 ways that they can differentiate themselves by being awesome. Leaving my guys a tip is great. Offering us water, letting us jump in your pool if that's something that's in the backyard. Those stories exist and they happen, and those are people I'll never forget how kind that was. I think I could probably list all of the 8 people who have let us swim in their pool over the last 7 years, and how unspeakably wonderful that was on a summer day.
Cool.
But other than that, every one of my clients that I'll work for again, which is 99.9% of them, they've all been great to me. I'm really grateful that I get to work in my I don't travel very far in my work. That I get to work for my neighbors in my community and make them happy and do a good job for them and continue to grow deeper roots in my community, because I work where I've lived my whole life. And that's been a really, really cool joy. I absolutely will.
So I want, for all of these podcasts I do, I don't want it to just be a one-shot thing where we talk. I'd like to search back in like 6 months and see where you're at. And I think one of the best ways for that to be something to look forward to is to challenge you to say, where do you want to be in 6 months or a year from now? What have you got on the horizon? What are you challenging yourself to do? Because then we can come back in 6 months and we can analyze why it didn't work. And that's valuable to anybody trying to start a company, or trying to grow a company. So what have you got planned for 6 months? What are the goals? Where do you want to be?
Absolutely. Where I want to be in 6 months would be, I want to have the same employees I have right now. It is actively my goal that I'm trying to keep them as happy as they can be and make their job as sweet and doable as possible, because their job is hard and they work hard and I like them. They're people that I get along with well. And in 2024, that was not the case. I'm so much more grateful for the people I'm working with right now this year. That's going to be the first one. I want to be working with the same employees that I have. That would be a tremendous victory. The other thing is that I hope that my skills continue to grow. That's going to be mechanical leadership, learning how to fix things better. There's no specific pieces of equipment that I want. I have everything I need. I'm working on paying everything off, but we're really right about there, actually. So we're company's debt free, which is just a tremendous weight off the shoulders. The other big goal that I would like to grow in would distinctly be getting better at attracting more attention, getting more clients, getting more lead opportunities. I have been dabbling in all of the different options that I know to be available to me, and they have all been a waste of time, a waste of money, in my experience. That will be something I'd be happy to talk to you about in 6 months. I've tried many, many things, and I'm truly not impressed at how advertising works nowadays. It is a waste of my money, in my experience.
What about
Keep trying.
what about contracts? Are you looking to expand into? I'm not trying to give you leading questions here, but are you looking for public works jobs? Are you looking for, expanding into contract work?
Yeah, yeah. That is something that I am absolutely considering and looking into. Um, those are things that I found you need a foot in the door, and I haven't seen that happen yet. And there might be a little bit of me being guilty of just waiting for Goldilocks to happen, waiting for everything to be perfect and not forcing it to happen, which is a little bit of what you need to do if you're a business owner. You need to go out and do stuff. You need to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. They tend to build on top of each other. My bit of advice, and I've helped companies get like huge contracts with utility companies.
Sure.
And two things. One, contracts build on top of each other, and you're going to discover that you need to have a certain level of dollar amount or number of trees or some sort of metric in your in your resume before you can apply for the bigger jobs. So taking the next step and getting those different contracts, those are the stepping stones that move you towards it. And then the second one
Yeah.
is building the organizational, structural infrastructure so that you can present to the potential client who you are on paper. And that's a lot of work
Yeah.
to try to get all that together because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for what jobs did you do before and what kind of a company are you? And we're using that as a proxy to determine whether or not you're even, worth letting us
Yeah.
bid. And then once you do that, then you got to bid smart. So 3 things.
You've hit on exactly what I think to be true. That was what I was suspicious of. And those take time in the game and experience and growth. And those are things that happen incrementally. And those are things that I would say maybe even have some still more, I have more growth to do yet before those are things that are actually available to me on the table. So I was suspicious and kind of thinking that that's what it would require.
Yeah, you got to build the resume, you got to build the infrastructure, so that you can build the trust because that's what you present to the
Yeah.
client, and then you got to bid right because if you don't bid it right, none of that matters because if you're not making money, then that's not going
We
to
don't want to do it.
Yeah.
All right.
So, frick, Tim Allen, from Wisconsin, um, arborist. Are you a certified arborist?
I am not. No.
Is that on your radar? Or is that something that you don't? Not everyone, thinks
Sure.
it's important.
I wanted the knowledge, so I bought the book and I was going to take the test. And then I realized that I was too busy to want to take out time to do the test. And I think that getting that certification is on the bucket list someday. But I think at this point it would just be I think the military term would be chest lettuce. I don't think it would offer me anything, to be entirely frank.
Yeah, unless you go up with the contracts, because like say you're going for utility contracts, you're going to have to, go probably through the TCIA utility contractor accreditation program, and I've led a company through that before, that was a challenge. But it's we come across the certified arborist and the CTSP and other certs and things like that come up on that resume portion. But you're right, if it's not something that for your current goals, it could just get in the way.
At this stage, the only reason I would want to do it would be so that I'd have the right to put the sticker on my truck.
Sure.
That would be the only thing, which is not nothing. But that would be the only thing I would find of value in that.
So, Wisconsin, awesome conversation with you. I can't wait to listen to this again and see what I might have missed when I was thinking about what I was going to say when you were talking rather than listening to what you were saying. That's one of the values of going back and watching your own podcast is you miss things that you should have been paying attention to while you were thinking about what you were going to say. This has been an awesome conversation. For those who are thinking about getting into the tree care industry, I hope you got something out of this. For those of you that are in the tree care industry, I hope you got something out of this. And I want to check back with you in a few months and see how things are going.
Happy to talk again in 6 months. That'd be great.
And do it again. So thank you so much for your time. Tell your wife, happy Mother's Day. And thank you. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Goat Pen Podcast. If you like this kind of content and everything else we do at goat-pen.com, please come visit and join.